The war room was filled with angry voices. Admiral Kangdeho sat at the far end of the long metal table, watching alien creatures argue with each other. Their words came through his translator as sharp sounds and bitter complaints. "We have lost another fleet," said Zephyros, the tall blue creature who led the Altarian forces. His forearms moved as he spoke, showing pictures in the air above the table. "The Voidborn destroyed 300 ships in the Kepler system yesterday." The other aliens around the table made worried sounds. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. They had been fighting the Voidborn Empire for over 300 years. Every day, more of their people died. Captain Li Sujin stood behind Admiral Kangdeho. She was the only other human in the room. Her uniform was different from the flowing robes and energy suits the aliens wore. It was plain green cloth with simple metal buttons. "The Voidborn adapt too quickly," said Nexari Prime, a creature that looked like living glass. "Every weapon we use against them stops working after a few battles. Their ships learn and change." Admiral Kangdeho had heard this same complaint many times before. The Galactic Council had the best technology in the galaxy. Their plasma weapons could cut through planets. Their energy shields could stop almost anything. Their ships could travel faster than light and appear anywhere in space, but none of it worked against the Voidborn. The Voidborn Empire was different from other enemies. Their ships were alive, made of metal and flesh growing together. When the Council shot plasma beams at them, the Voidborn ships would change their skin to absorb the energy. When the Council used laser weapons, the Voidborn would grow mirrors on their hulls to reflect the light back. "We need new ideas," said Commander Thok, a creature with 6 legs and green skin. "The old ways are not working." Zephyros looked around the table with his large purple eyes. "What about using stronger plasma weapons? Or maybe we can build bigger energy cannons? We tried that," Nexari Prime replied. "The Voidborn just adapt faster. Last month, our most powerful energy weapons became useless in 2 hours." Admiral Kangdeho listened to them talk about the same failed plans they had tried for decades. He remembered when humanity first joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. The aliens had been polite but not very interested. Humans were new to space travel. They still used rockets that burned chemical fuel. Their weapons shot metal bullets instead of energy beams. The aliens thought humans were primitive. "Perhaps we should ask the humans for their opinion," said Nexari Prime, but not in a way that sounded serious. Some of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughing. Zephyros shook his head. "Humans are too new to space war. They do not understand how advanced battles work." Admiral Kangdeho had been waiting for this moment. He stood up slowly, his chair making a small squeaking sound. All the aliens turned to look at him. "We have been watching your war for 50 years, he said in a calm voice. "We have studied your battles and your enemies. And what have you learned?" asked Zephyros, sounding like he was talking to a child. "You are fighting the wrong war," Admiral Kangdeho replied. The room became quiet. Captain Li Sujin stepped forward and touched a button on her wrist device. A hologram appeared above the table, showing the latest battle at the Kepler system. "You use energy weapons because you think they are better," she said. "But better for what? The Voidborn can adapt to any energy attack. They have been doing it for 300 years. What else can we use?" asked Commander Thok. "Energy weapons are the most advanced technology we have." Admiral Kangdeho smiled, but not in a happy way. "Advanced is not always better. Sometimes old ways work when new ways fail." "You mean primitive weapons?" Zephyros sounded shocked. "Metal bullets and chemical explosives? Those weapons are thousands of years old." "Yes," said Admiral Kangdeho. "And the Voidborn have never learned to adapt to them because no one has used them for thousands of years." The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Some made clicking sounds with their mouths or breathing holes. The idea of using old weapons seemed crazy to them. "Impossible," said Nexari Prime. "Primitive weapons cannot defeat an advanced enemy." "Can they adapt to a chunk of metal traveling at light speed?" asked Captain Li Sujin. Can they evolve immunity to radiation poisoning? Can they grow defenses against chemical weapons they have never seen before? The room became very quiet again. Admiral Condejo could see the aliens thinking about what the humans had said. For the first time in 300 years, someone had suggested something completely different. "You are talking about going backwards," said Zephyros. "Using ancient methods of killing." "We are talking about using methods that work," Admiral Condejo replied. "The Voidborn expect plasma and energy weapons. They do not expect bullets and bombs." Commander Thok leaned forward with interest. "How certain are you that this would succeed?" Admiral Condejo looked around the room at all the alien faces watching him. Some looked curious, others looked worried, and a few looked angry. "Give us 5 hours," he said simply. 5 hours? Zephyros sounded confused. 5 hours to do what? To end your war. The room exploded with noise. Aliens shouted in languages that made the translator smoke and spark. Some stood up so fast their chairs fell over. Others made sounds like angry animals. "Impossible!" Zephyros shouted over the noise. "We have been fighting for 3 centuries. And you have been losing for 3 centuries. Captain Lee Sujin said calmly. Admiral Condejo raised his hand and slowly the room became quiet again. 5 hours, he repeated. "If humans cannot end this war in 5 hours, we will leave. The Council forever. We will never offer help again." "And if you succeed," asked Nexari Prime, "then you will know that sometimes the old ways are the best ways?" Zephyros looked around the table at the other council members. They whispered to each other in their strange languages. Finally, he turned back to Admiral Condejo. "Very well," he said. "You have 5 hours. But when you fail, humanity must accept that you are not ready for galactic war." Admiral Condejo nodded. "And when we succeed, the Council will remember that experience matters more than technology." As the meeting ended, Captain Lee Sujin walked beside her admiral toward the door. "Are you certain we can do this?" she asked quietly. Admiral Condejo looked back at the aliens who were still arguing among themselves. "Captain, they have been fighting a clean war against an enemy that adapts to clean fighting. We are about to show them what a dirty war looks like." Outside the council building, human ships were already moving toward the battle zone. Ships that looked crude and ugly compared to the beautiful alien vessels. Ships filled with weapons that the galaxy had forgotten how to fear. The 5-hour countdown had begun. The space around Obsidian Prime looked like a metal graveyard. Broken pieces of Galactic Council ships floated in the darkness, twisted and burned from countless failed attacks. The Voidborn Fortress world hung in the center of it all like a giant black eye watching the galaxy. Commander Park Minho stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Soul's Fury. Through the thick glass windows, he could see the enemy fleet moving toward them. The Voidborn ships did not look like normal spaceships. They were alive, made of dark metal and pulsing flesh that moved like breathing animals. "Sir, the Voidborn fleet is taking attack positions," said Lieutenant Kim Hyjin from her weapons. "Control station." Her fingers moved over buttons that looked simple compared to the glowing panels used by other species. "How many ships?" asked Commander Park Minho. 200 large vessels, maybe 500 smaller ones," she replied. "They are spreading out in the same pattern they used against the Council fleets," Commander Park Minho nodded. The human fleet was much smaller. Only 50 ships, and they looked nothing like the sleek Council vessels. The human ships were blocky and gray, covered with thick metal plates. They looked old and crude, like tools built for hard work instead of beauty. "Sir, we are getting a message from the Voidborn," said Communications Officer Nam Juho. "They want to know if we surrender." "Tell them we are here to talk," Commander Park Minho said with a small smile. On the viewing screen, the Voidborn ships began to change. Their hulls shifted and moved like living skin. Energy shields appeared around them, glowing with different colors as they prepared to face the expected plasma weapons. "Look at them," said Lieutenant Kim Hyjin. "They are already adapting their defenses. They think we will attack them the same way the Council always does." Commander Park Min-ho watched the alien ships prepare for an energy weapon battle. The Voidborn had done this thousands of times before. Their living ships would absorb the plasma beams, learn from the attack, and then become immune to that type of weapon. It was how they had won every battle for 300 years. "All ships, this is Sol's Fury," Commander Park Min-ho spoke into his communication device. "Prepare kinetic weapons, load tungsten rounds." The human fleet began to move. Unlike the Council ships that danced through space with grace, the human vessels moved in straight lines. They looked like flying metal boxes compared to the flowing Voidborn ships. "Sir, the enemy is moving closer," reported Sensor Officer Lee Yuna. "They are confident. Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons." "Perfect," said Commander Park Min-ho. "That means they are not ready for what we have." The Voidborn fleet approached in their usual pattern. Their ships spread out like a net, each one ready to absorb and adapt to plasma attacks. Their commanders had studied Council battle tactics for centuries. They knew exactly what to expect. They did not expect chunks of metal traveling at 15% of light speed. "Fire," ordered Commander Park Min-ho. The human ships did not shoot beams of light or balls of energy. Instead, they launched clouds of tungsten rods. The metal pieces were simple, just dense chunks of one of the hardest metals humans knew. But they moved so fast they became invisible. The first tungsten rods hit the Voidborn ships like invisible hammers. The alien vessels had shields designed to absorb energy, but they could not absorb solid matter moving at such incredible speed. The rods punched through the living hulls like bullets through paper. "Direct hits on 12 enemy vessels," reported Lieutenant Kim Hae-jin. "Their shields did nothing to stop us." On the viewing screen, Commander Park Min-ho watched Voidborn ships spin out of control. The living metal of their hulls tried to heal the damage, but the tungsten rods had created holes too large to fix quickly. Atmosphere and fluid sprayed out into space. "Sir, the enemy is trying to adapt," said Sensor Officer Lee Yuna. "Their ships are changing, trying to create defenses against solid projectiles. How long will that take them?" asked Commander Park Min-ho. "Maybe 10 minutes for basic protection, an hour for full immunity." Commander Park Min-ho smiled. "We will not give them 10 minutes. All ships launch nuclear missiles." The Voidborn were still trying to understand what had hit them when the human ships fired their second weapon. Nuclear missiles flew toward the alien fleet, but these were not the clean fusion weapons that the Council used. These were old-style fission bombs that created massive amounts of radiation. "Sir, why are we using dirty nuclear weapons?" asked Lieutenant Kim Hae-jin. "Fusion bombs are much cleaner." "Because the Voidborn have never learned to protect against radiation poisoning," Commander Park Min-ho explained. "Their ships can heal from energy damage, but they cannot evolve immunity to radiation in a few minutes." The nuclear missiles exploded among the Voidborn fleet like deadly flowers. The radiation spread through space, and the living ships began to sicken. Their organic parts started dying from radiation exposure. "Enemy fleet is in chaos," reported Communications Officer Nam Joo-ho. "We are intercepting their signals. They are calling us Ancient Death and the Metal Storm." Commander Park Min-ho watched more Voidborn ships die. The alien fleet that had seemed so powerful was now breaking apart. Ships that had survived countless Council attacks were being destroyed by weapons their enemies had used thousands of years ago. "Sir, some enemy vessels are trying to retreat," said Sensor Officer Lee Yuna. "Let them go," Commander Park Min-ho ordered. "But make sure they see what happens to the ones that stay." The human fleet moved forward, still firing tungsten rods and nuclear missiles. The remaining Voidborn ships tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed for battles against energy shields and plasma armor. The thick metal plates on human ships absorbed their attacks easily. "This is incredible," said Lieutenant Kim Hae-jin. "We have destroyed half their fleet in 1 hour, and we have not lost a single ship. The Council could not do this in 300 years. Added Communications Officer Nam Joo-ho. Commander Park Min-ho nodded, but he did not look happy about the destruction. The Council tried to fight an advanced war against an enemy that adapts. to advanced weapons. We are fighting a primitive war against an enemy that has forgotten how to defend against primitive weapons. On the viewing screen, the last group of Voidborn ships finally managed to activate some defenses against solid projectiles. But it was too late. Most of their fleet was already destroyed or dying from radiation. "Sir, incoming message from Admiral Kong Dae-ho," said Communications Officer Nam Ju-ho. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, Commander Park Min-ho could see the bridge of the command ship, filled with officers working calmly at their stations. "Commander Park, excellent work," said Admiral Kong Dae-ho. "How much of their fleet is left?" "About 30%, sir." "They are retreating toward their fortress world." "Good, let them retreat." "They need to tell their leaders what just happened." Fear is a weapon too, and the Voidborn have never felt fear before. Commander Park Min-ho understood. The survivors would carry the story of this battle to other Voidborn forces. They would spread fear of the humans who fought with ancient weapons that could not be adapted to or defended against. "Sir, what are our orders for the next hour?" asked Commander Park Min-ho. Admiral Kong Dae-ho smiled grimly. "We follow them home. It is time to show the Voidborn what happens when you attack a species that has spent its entire history learning new ways to kill things." The human fleet moved deeper into Voidborn space. Behind them floated the wreckage of an enemy force that had seemed unbeatable just 1 hour before. The aliens had learned to fight clean wars with advanced technology, but humans had learned to fight dirty wars with whatever worked. And in war, dirty fighting usually wins. Dr. Yoon Jae-wook sat in the communications room of the command ship, listening to voices that sounded like screaming metal and breaking glass. The Voidborn language was harsh and strange, but his translation computer was working hard to understand their words. "Admiral," he called over the ship's communication system, "you need to hear this." Admiral Kong Dae-ho arrived at the communications room within minutes. He looked tired but alert. The first hour of fighting had gone better than expected, but the real battle was just beginning. "What are they saying?" asked the Admiral. Dr. Yoon Jae-wook played the recorded Voidborn messages. Even through the translator, the alien voices sounded afraid and confused. "They are calling us the Ancient Death," he explained. "They cannot understand how we are destroying their ships. Listen to this message from their fleet commander." The recording played a voice that sounded like, "Nails on metal. The new enemy uses weapons from the dawn of war. Our ships cannot adapt because these weapons do not use energy. They throw metal and poison at us like primitive animals. How do we fight enemies who refuse to evolve?" Admiral Kong Dae-ho nodded with satisfaction. "Fear is spreading through their ranks. What else?" "They are sending warnings to all Voidborn forces," Dr. Yoon Jae-wook continued. "They tell their commanders that human weapons cannot be adapted to. They say we fight like we are already dead." "In a way we do," said Admiral Kong Dae-ho. "Every human soldier knows that war means some of us will die. The Voidborn have forgotten that lesson because they always believed they could evolve their way out of danger." The ship shook slightly as they moved deeper into the obsidian system. Outside, the human fleet was approaching the inner defenses of the Voidborn fortress world. These defenses had never been broken in 300 years of war. "Sir, we have a problem," came Captain Lee So-jin's voice over the communication system. "The Voidborn are trying a new tactic." Admiral Kong Dae-ho and Dr. Yoon Jae-wook hurried to the bridge. Through the main viewing window, they could see something that made both men stop and stare. The Voidborn ships were changing in a way no one had seen before. Instead of trying to adapt their hulls, they were becoming transparent, like ghosts made of metal and flesh. "What are they doing?" asked Admiral Kong Dae-ho. "They are phasing," explained Captain Lee So-jin. "Becoming partly solid and partly energy. Our kinetic weapons will pass right through them." On the viewing screen, they watched tungsten rods fly harmlessly through the ghostly Voidborn ships. The aliens had found a way to make themselves immune to solid projectiles by becoming less solid themselves. "Sir, they are moving to attack," reported Weapons Officer Kim Hae-jin. If they can phase through our hull armor, they can attack us from inside our own ships. Admiral Kandeho was quiet for a moment, thinking. The Voidborn had adapted faster than expected, but humans had been preparing for this war for 50 years, studying every Voidborn tactic and ability. Captain Lee, activate internal defenses. He ordered. All compartments, full lockdown. Sir? Captain Lee Sujin looked confused. The Voidborn think they can phase through our hulls and attack us from inside, Admiral Kongdeho explained. They are right, so we will let them. The human fleet continued forward as transparent Voidborn ships moved closer. The alien vessels looked like metal ghosts floating through space. They phased through the outer hulls of human ships and materialized. Inside, expecting to find surprised and helpless crews. Instead, they found hell. The humans had lined every ship with depleted uranium plating. When the Voidborn fighters materialized inside human vessels, they found themselves in rooms filled with deadly radiation. Emergency systems immediately flooded the compartments with nerve gas and toxic chemicals. Direct hits on enemy boarding. Parties, reported Internal Security Chief Oh Seo-young from her station. They expected to find normal ship interiors. They found poison gas and radiation instead. The Voidborn fighters who had phased inside human ships began dying immediately. Their organic parts could not handle the deadly environment that humans had prepared for them. The aliens had evolved to fight clean technological battles, not chemical warfare in radioactive rooms. Sir, more Voidborn ships are trying to phase through our hulls, said Captain Lee Sujin. Let them come, replied Admiral Kongdeho. Everyone that phases inside dies. Eventually they will stop trying. But the Voidborn were stubborn. Wave after wave of their phased fighters entered human ships, only to die from radiation and poison gas. The aliens could not understand why their perfect tactic was failing. They keep trying the same attack, observed Dr. Yun Jae-wook. They cannot believe that we prepared for this. The council races would never fill their ships with poison gas and radiation, said Admiral Kongdeho. They think it is too dangerous and primitive, but humans have always been willing to live in dangerous places if it meant winning. After an hour of failed boarding attempts, the Voidborn finally stopped trying to phase through human hulls. Too many of their fighters had died horribly inside the toxic human ships. Sir, the enemy is retreating to their planetary defenses, reported Sensor Officer Lee Yuna. Good, said Admiral Kongdeho. Colonel Troy, are your Marines ready for ground combat? Colonel Troy Yunesio appeared on the communication screen. Behind her, Admiral Kongdeho could see soldiers checking weapons that looked ancient compared to the energy rifles used by council forces. Chemical flamethrowers, explosive charges, and firearms that shot metal bullets. Ready, sir, she said. My troops are equipped for dirty fighting. Chemical weapons, radiation suits, and explosives that cannot be adapted to. Remember, Admiral Kongdeho told her, the Voidborn expect energy weapons and clean tactics. They have never faced an enemy that uses poison gas and explosive charges. Colonel Choi Unesio smiled grimly. Sir, my Marines have studied every human war in history. We know how to fight dirty. The human fleet moved into orbit around Obsidian Prime. The fortress world looked like a giant tumor in space, covered with organic defenses that pulsed and moved like living tissue. These defenses had adapted to every weapon the Council had ever used, but they had never seen human weapons. Sir, we are receiving a message from the Voidborn Planetary Commander, said Communications Officer Nam Ju-Ho. The alien voice that came through the translator sounded desperate. What are you? Your weapons make no sense? You fight like you are trying to die. How can we negotiate with creatures that embrace death? Admiral Kongdeho took the communication device. We are humans, he said simply. And we are not trying to die, we are trying to win. There is a difference. Your tactics are impossible, the Voidborn replied. You use weapons that evolution discarded. You fill your ships with poison. You fight without logic or reason. We fight with experience, Admiral Kongdeho corrected. Every human child learns about war from history books. We study every battle our species ever fought. We remember what works. There was silence from the Voidborn commander for a long moment. Then the alien voice spoke again, quieter than before. What do you want? Admiral Kangdeho looked around the bridge at his officers. Captain Lee Sujin, Dr. Yoon Jae-wook, Colonel Choi Yoon-seo on the screen, and all the others who had helped humanity reach this moment. Surrender, he said simply. End this war, release all conquered worlds. Return to your home systems and never expand again. And if we refuse? Admiral Kangdeho checked the time display on his wrist. 3 hours had passed since the human fleet arrived. In 2 more hours, their promise to the Galactic Council would be complete. Then we will show you what human ground forces can do. To a planet that thinks it cannot be conquered, he replied. The communication ended with silence. On the viewing screen, the living surface of Obsidian Prime pulsed and writhed like a frightened animal. For the first time in its existence, the fortress world faced an enemy it could not understand or defeat. The 4th hour was about to begin. General Nam Hojin stood in the transport ship, looking down at Obsidian Prime through the thick metal floor window. The planet looked alive, its surface covered with moving tissue and pulsing veins of light. Defensive structures grew and changed, like cancer adapting to threats that had not even appeared yet. Sir, the planet is already trying to prepare for our attack, said Major Park Jin-woo, pointing at the viewing screen. Look at those surface changes. General Nam Ho-jin watched the planet's skin shift and move. New defensive positions were growing like mushrooms after rain. Energy shields sparkled across the surface. Weapon systems that looked like giant insects pushed up through the ground. They are preparing for plasma bombardment and energy weapons, he said. The same attacks they have faced for 300 years. What they are not prepared for is this, said Sergeant Major Kwon Tae-sung, patting the chemical tanks attached to his combat suit. Napalm, white phosphorus, and nerve gas. Weapons that do not adapt because they burn and poison instead of shooting energy. The transport ships were filled with human marines carrying equipment that the galaxy had forgotten. Flamethrowers that sprayed burning chemicals. Explosive charges made with simple gunpowder. Gas masks and radiation suits for fighting in places too toxic for other species to survive. Remember, General Nam Ho-jin told his troops, the Voidborn expect clean warfare. They think all advanced species fight with precision and honor. We are going to show them what desperate fighting looks like. Captain Oh Seo-young led the first wave of armored vehicles. Her tanks were old-fashioned machines powered by internal combustion engines that burned fossil fuel. They moved slowly compared to the energy-powered vehicles used by other species, but they had one important advantage. Sir, the planetary defenses cannot target us properly, she reported over the radio. Our engines are so primitive that their sensors barely register us as threats. The Voidborn had evolved their defenses to track energy signatures and high-tech equipment. The human vehicles, powered by burning gasoline and diesel fuel, were almost invisible to the alien sensors. The planet's automated defenses kept looking for advanced targets while primitive tanks rolled right past them. General Nam Ho-jin watched from his command vehicle as the first human forces landed on the planet's surface. The living ground immediately began to change, trying to create defenses against the expected energy weapons. All units, begin chemical bombardment, he ordered. The human forces opened fire with weapons that had not been used in galactic warfare. For over 1,000 years, napalm bombs fell from aircraft, spreading burning gel across the organic surface. The living planet tried to heal itself, but napalm burns everything it touches, including the cellular repair systems. Direct hits on defensive positions, reported Captain Oh Seo-young. The planet is trying to adapt to fire damage, but it takes time to evolve immunity to burning chemicals. White phosphorus shells exploded across the battlefield, creating clouds of toxic smoke that ate through organic tissue like acid. The planet's surface began to smoke and bubble as the chemical weapons did their work. Sir, the enemy is trying to counterattack, called out Lieutenant Colonel Shin Jae-ho from the Eastern Front. But their weapons are designed for fighting energy shields. Our simple armor is absorbing their attacks easily. The human Marines wore thick metal plates and ceramic armor instead of the energy shields used by other species. The Void-born weapons, designed to penetrate advanced defensive systems, could not handle the simple protection that human soldiers carried. "This is like fighting with ancient weapons against laser guns," said Sergeant Major Quan Tae Sung as his unit advanced through the toxic battlefield. "Except the laser guns do not work on ancient armor." General Nam Ho-jin moved his command post closer to the front lines. Through his binoculars he could see void-born creatures emerging from underground tunnels. They looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh, with weapons growing from their bodies like extra limbs. "All units, prepare for close combat," he ordered. "Remember, they expect energy weapons. Give them bullets and blades." The human Marines charged into battle with weapons that would have looked normal in wars from centuries past. Assault rifles that fired metal bullets, combat knives made of steel, explosive grenades filled with simple gunpowder and metal fragments. The Voidborn creatures had never faced such weapons before. Their bodies were designed to absorb energy and adapt to technological attacks, but bullets punched holes in them that could not be quickly healed. Explosive grenades created damage that spread in all directions like ancient shrapnel wounds. "Sir, we have broken through their outer defensive line," reported Captain Oh Young. "Enemy forces are falling back toward the planetary core." "How long have we been fighting?" asked General Nam Ho-jin. 45 minutes, sir." General Nam Ho-jin nodded. In 45 minutes, human forces had penetrated defenses that had held against the Galactic Council for 3 centuries. The difference was simple. The Council had tried to out-evolve an evolving enemy. Humans had used weapons that evolution could not quickly answer. "Sir, we are getting strange readings from the planetary core," said Communications Officer Lim Soo-young. "The Void-born Central Command is trying to communicate with us." The message came through the translator as a sound like grinding metal. "Stop your advance, we wish to negotiate." "Tell them we will negotiate after we reach their command center," General Nam Ho-jin replied. "Unconditional surrender is the only term we will accept." "Sir, they are asking how we can fight so effectively with primitive weapons," said Communications Officer Lim Soo-young. General Nam Ho-jin thought about the question. How could he explain to an advanced alien species that sometimes the old ways worked better than new ones? "Tell them that humans never forgot how to fight dirty," he said finally. "When you spend thousands of years learning to kill things that are trying to kill you, you remember every method that works." The human forces continued their advance toward the planetary core. Behind them, the surface of Obsidian Prime was covered with chemical fires and toxic smoke. The living planet was dying from weapons it had no immunity to. "Sir, enemy resistance is collapsing," reported Lieutenant Colonel Shin Jae-ho. "They cannot adapt fast enough to our combined chemical and kinetic attacks." "How much time do we have left?" asked General Nam Ho-jin. 1 hour and 10 minutes until our 5-hour deadline," replied his aide. General Nam Ho-jin smiled grimly. They were going to make it. The fortress world that had never been conquered was falling to an army using weapons from humanity's violent past. "Sir, we have reached the entrance to the planetary core," called Captain Oh Young over the radio. "The Voidborn are not fighting anymore. They are just trying to run away." "Do not let them escape," ordered General Nam Ho-jin. "We need prisoners to explain to the rest of their empire what happened here." As human forces surrounded the entrance to the Voidborn Command Center, General Nam Ho-jin reflected on the battle. The aliens had spent centuries learning to fight the wrong war. They had prepared for energy weapons and technological battles. They had never imagined facing an enemy that would use poison gas, burning chemicals, and metal bullets. "All units, prepare for final assault on the command center," he ordered. "Remember, we want the Voidborn leaders alive. Dead enemies cannot surrender." The last hour of the war was about to begin, and humanity was winning with weapons their enemies had forgotten how to fear. Admiral Kang Dae-ho walked through the corridors of the Voidborn Command Center. The walls were alive, made of metal and flesh that pulsed like a giant heart. Emergency lights flickered in colors that human eyes were not meant to see. The air tasted of copper and decay. Behind him, Sergeant Major Kwan Taesung led a squad of Marines carrying simple weapons. Their metal armor was scorched and dented from the battle, but they had won. In less than 5 hours, they had done what the Galactic Council could not do in 300 years. "Sir, the main command chamber is just ahead," said Captain Lee Soo-jin, checking her handheld scanner. "We are detecting one large life form and several smaller ones." "The Voidborn Central Intelligence," Admiral Kong Dae-ho replied. "The brain that has been commanding their empire for centuries." They reached a massive door made of living metal. It was already open, hanging loose like a broken jaw. Inside, the command chamber was enormous, filled with organic machinery that looked like the inside of a giant creature. In the center of the room sat something that had once been the most powerful being in the known galaxy. The Voidborn Central Intelligence was dying. It looked like a mountain-sized brain made of dark metal and rotting flesh. Cables and tubes connected it to machines that sparked and smoked. The creature's thoughts had once controlled billions of soldiers across hundreds of worlds. Now it could barely speak. "You," it said through damaged speakers, its voice like breaking glass. "The ancient killers. The ones who refused to evolve." Admiral Kong Dae-ho stepped closer, his boots making small sounds on the wet floor. "We are humans," he said simply. "And we came to end your war." "How?" the creature whispered. "We adapted to every weapon. We evolved beyond every threat." "How did you defeat us with primitive tools?" Sergeant Major Kwan Tae-sung stepped forward, his scarred face showing the marks of the recent battle. "You adapted to the weapons your enemies were using," he said. "But you forgot about the weapons they stopped using." The Voidborn Intelligence made a sound like bitter laughter. "Bullets and chemicals, fire and poison, weapons from the dawn of warfare. We had forgotten such crude methods existed." "That was your mistake," said Admiral Kong Dae-ho. "You assumed that advanced meant better. But sometimes old solutions work best against new problems." Around the chamber, smaller voidborn creatures scuttled in the shadows. They looked like metal insects, but they moved slowly, weakened by the chemical weapons that still poisoned the air. These were the commanders and advisors who had helped plan the Empire's expansion for centuries. "We offer surrender," the Central Intelligence said, its voice growing weaker. "Total surrender. We will withdraw from all conquered worlds. We will return to our home systems and never expand again." "And if we refuse?" asked Captain Lee Soo-jin. "Then you will destroy us completely," the creature replied. "We cannot fight enemies who embrace death as readily as life. We cannot adapt to weapons that kill through simple physics and chemistry." Admiral Kong Dae-ho checked his watch. 4 hours and 50 minutes had passed since the human fleet arrived at Obsidian Prime. In 10 minutes, their promise to the Galactic Council would be fulfilled. "We accept your surrender," he said. "But understand this. If your empire ever expands again, if you ever attack another world, humans will return. And next time, we will not offer mercy." The Voidborn Intelligence pulsed with something that might have been relief. "We understand. Your species has shown us that there are still predators in the galaxy. We do not wish to face them again." "Sir," said Communications Officer Nam Ju-ho over the radio, "we are receiving messages from Voidborn forces across the galaxy. They are withdrawing from all occupied systems." "The war is over." Admiral Kong Dae-ho felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For 50 years, humanity had watched the Galactic Council struggle against an enemy that seemed unbeatable. The aliens had tried to fight a clean, technological war against an opponent that adapted to clean technology. Humans had fought a dirty war with weapons that worked. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," said Communications Officer Namju-ho. The holographic image of Zephyros appeared in the command chamber. The alien leader looked shocked and confused. Behind him, Admiral Kong Dae-ho could see other council members arguing and pointing at displays. "Admiral Kong Dae-ho," Zephyros said, his forearms moving in what might have been distress. "Our sensors show that the Voidborn Empire is in complete retreat. Their forces are abandoning every contested system. How is this possible? We kept our promise, Admiral Kongdeho replied calmly. 5 hours, the war is over. But how? Zephyros insisted. Your fleet was tiny compared to theirs. Your weapons are primitive. This should have been impossible. Sergeant Major Quan Taesung stepped into view of the hologram. His uniform was torn and stained with chemicals from the battle, but he stood straight and proud. You spent 300 years trying to fight the war you thought you should fight, he said. We fought the war that actually existed. Sometimes the difference between winning and losing is just using the right tool for the job. What tools? Asked Zephyros. Kinetic weapons instead of energy beams, said Captain Lee Sujin. Chemical weapons instead of plasma. Radiation instead of clean fusion. Everything your enemies had forgotten how to defend against. Mixari Prime's crystalline form appeared beside Zephyros. You used primitive weapons against an advanced enemy. We used effective weapons against an adapted enemy, Admiral Kongdeho corrected. The Voidborn had evolved immunity to your advanced technology. They had not evolved immunity to bullets and poison gas. The Galactic Council members looked at each other with expressions that the human translator could not properly decode. Some seemed amazed, others appeared frightened, and a few looked angry. This changes everything, said Commander Thok, his green skin darker than usual. If primitive weapons can defeat advanced defenses, then all of our military assumptions are wrong. Not wrong, said Admiral Kongdeho, incomplete. You forgot that warfare is not about having the most advanced weapons. It is about having the right weapons for your specific enemy. Sir, it is exactly 5 hours since we began this operation. Reported Communications Officer Namju-Ho. Admiral Kang. Deho nodded and looked up at the holographic images of the Galactic Council. The war is over. The Voidborn Empire has surrendered unconditionally. All occupied worlds are being evacuated. Humanity has kept its promise. Zephyros was quiet for a long moment. And what do you want in return? Respect, said Admiral Kang. Deho simply, we want the Council to understand that experience in warfare is as valuable as advanced technology. We want our opinions to be heard when the galaxy faces new threats. You will have it, Zephyros replied. After today, no one will question humanity's place in galactic defense. The communication ended, leaving the humans alone in the dying command chamber. Around them, the Voidborn Central Intelligence continued to fade, its organic machinery shutting down after centuries of constant operation. Sir, what happens now? Asked Captain Lee Sujin. Admiral Kongdeho looked around. The chamber that had once commanded the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Now it was just a dying creature in a room full of broken machines. Now we go home, he said. We have shown the galaxy that humanity deserves respect. But more importantly, we have shown ourselves that sometimes the old ways are still the best ways. As the human forces withdrew from Obsidian Prime, they left behind a lesson that the galaxy would never forget. Advanced technology was not always superior to simple solutions. Evolution and adaptation meant nothing against enemies who remembered how to fight with tools that worked. The war was over, won not by the most sophisticated weapons, but by soldiers who understood that in warfare, effectiveness matters more than elegance. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy by reminding everyone that sometimes, to solve tomorrow's problems, you needed to remember yesterday's solutions. The age of human military influence in galactic affairs had begun.